We got a special edition of the call up today. We have the Assistant Director of Player Development with the Milwaukee Brewers, Brenton, who had a different title last time he was on. So one, I'm really excited that you are a recurring guest, but two, I'm even more excited that you continue to climb up in one of the most impressive organizations, and it's been so cool to see everything you guys are doing. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about it when I know it's a chaotic part of the season.
Yeah, man, pumped to be back on the show. Pumped to be talking everything Brewers, and yeah, it's a chaotic season as we're building up to the draft as well.
Yeah, and we'll get to that a little bit because I am so fascinated by the draft approach that the Brewers have, and we're going to talk about some guys that were recently drafted, and it's really hard to argue against the success, but also that. And the way I tried to get you on the show, I was like, can I just ask you why the Carolina Mudcats are the 1927 Yankees of low A? And you're like, yes. So I do want to just start there. And then I do want to also talk about just the new job and just everything that's gone into that. Because, again, you guys are as impressive of an organization, not just saying because you're on the show. Like, we talk about it all the time on the show, just the development side, but the scouting, as you alluded to before we hit record, and just how it all kind of works together. You guys identify the talent, and then you just watch these players just get better and better and better and better. But what's really cool is in low A right now in Carolina, that's more of the, okay, you identified these guys, they're still early in their development, but it doesn't look like it when you watch a Jesus Mate and a Luis Peña, especially, but then several other players who have just been so impressive down there. How much time have you spent around that team and in spring training? Did you realize that you guys maybe have a very, very special ball club there in low A? Like, at what point did that start to set in the organization?
I think the realization of how talented we're going to be in Carolina started during instruction league last year. Okay, because you had Eric Batanti join the team late in the season after the ACL season ended, and we were able to get Josh Adamczewski out in the org after like a really weird injury that he had to battle through from the start of spring training. So we saw the talent that we had, and then obviously we have the draft, right? And we were able to get Braylon Payne out of the draft in the first round there. And then the emergence of Mate and Peña throughout the course of the DSL season really kind of sparked the conversation of, do they skip the ACL and head straight to Carolina? Because of just how dominant they were. And they weren't the high-profile international sign, where we had Quintana there. So all of a sudden they burst onto the scene, and then you start like putting these pieces together, and you're going, yeah. And then all of a sudden Marco Dingus like kind of comes into the fold, and we said we could be really, really good at this level. So it started during instruction league last year.
So, Brenton, I'm curious about like the iron sharpens iron approach, because we've seen other organizations try and maybe shoehorn prospects into a good situation. Like I remember the Project Birmingham thing that the White Sox did a few years ago, and it was, hey, let's put our best prospects in the same spot and just have all the good guys elevate the other good guys. Obviously, this is a bit more in line with where they would actually be in their development and how, it just kind of lined up this way, and it may be more coincidental than that. But is there an element of iron sharpens iron going on in Carolina?
Yeah, I mean, let's really give a lot of credit to our scouting group internationally and domestically. They've identified the talent, right? And so to hit on the Jackson Chiaro type talent, and then followed up with a Mate, Jesus Mate and Luis Peña. We're extremely fortunate, but it also is a testament to how good our scouts have been, throughout the whole organization. We've hit on some guys in this moment, and we just need to make sure that we continue to develop them. It's really exciting to see the youth that we have, paired up with Batanti, who's still 19 years old, and then we've got it doesn't look like it, no. 80 great handshake, by the way. And then on top of it, you layer in Jesus Mate, who was 17 to start the year and just turned 18, and Luis Peña's 18, and then you got Braylon Payne, who's 19. It's just they've come together and at this moment in time where they're on their journey now together, and hopefully that we can move this core up through the system.
What is the process of, and I know that the Brewers, you guys have been a little bit more willing maybe than some other organizations when you have a guy that's capable of being able to maybe skip the complex league. What does that conversation look like in terms of like maybe what you're looking for out of these players? And ultimately, I guess, how do you get to the point where a Jesus Mate, which I would say putting up, batted ball data that's almost borderline unprecedented would help, but even like a Luis Peña, who you look at who he's been this year, he was phenomenal, one of the best players of the DSL, but the quality of contact is just night and day. Like he's just a even different hitter now. What was that process of deciding, because it is a big decision, I imagine, that these players are going to skip the Arizona Complex League and go straight to low A?
Yeah, I think ultimately you look at, is there a talent gap in the system? And we have a bit of one right now at our high A affiliate in Wisconsin, where they're just not as talented. So it's like you try to minimize that gap, and you try to maybe risk err on the side of, we're going to be a little bit more aggressive with some of these younger players, right? But not too aggressive where like they're skipping the complex and going straight to high A. They're still young. We've got time. So we put them in a challenging situation with patience and a growth mindset. It's like, let's grow them. Maybe the second half, did we anticipate them getting off to this hot of a start? I'll be honest with you, I didn't. My biggest concern for Peña and Made was both these players saw over 60% fastballs last year in the DSL.
Yeah.
Going to the Carolina League, where it's flipped and you're going to see more breaking balls than you are fastball, regardless of the velocity. I was a bit concerned like how they were going to handle that. There's still a little bit of struggle, but they're growing within that affiliate. They're growing within the league, and that's what we want to see while having success. And so ultimately it's, what are they doing with spin? What are they doing laning counts? And understanding, like, are we okay moving them in the second half? And I'm not saying we're going to, or are we okay keeping the group together, knowing that next year they're going to be 18, 19, 20 at high A, which would be really exciting. So it's aggressive, but it's kind of also guarded, if you will. It's not overly aggressive, but we're pushing them at a rate where we think they can succeed and still have patience with them.
It's really interesting to hear the fastball usage number differing that much between the complex and low A. And I think league-wide fastball usage in Major League Baseball is around 45% right now. Where does that number flip? Like, is that uniform? Is 45 typically what you see at the low A high level, or is it decreased as you climb?
I think, when you're talking about minor league baseball, it's more about the identity of each organization and what they value. Some organizations are going to value, fastball usage over breaking ball usage, and my past two trips I just got off of, we were facing the Marlins affiliates, and it was a lot of spin. So it just depends on what the organization values and puts stock in. I just know, having been in this role for the past 3 years, that when you travel to the Carolina League and you're facing Fayetteville, you're facing Down East, you're going to see more spin than you are fastball. And there's starters that are 95 to 97, and they're throwing more breaking balls than they are fastballs. So whether that's a development tool, like we want to develop some command with the spin, I don't know. I know that these two kids were not going to see more fastballs. And so it's like, how do we prepare them to see more breaking ball and understand what the strike to ball or ball to strike breaking ball looks like, knowing that there are going to be some potential growing pains. But, the good ones, they figure it out, and so far they've figured it out.
And I want to just kind of follow up on those two, because it's not even just Brewers fans who I know are extremely excited. You're just seeing baseball fans in general, especially those who keep up with prospects, just mesmerized by not just Jesus Mate, who has become definitely that transcendent prospect, whether you're a card collector or whatever it may be, like that's the buzzy name, but Luis Peña as well. I'll start with Peña, because I think Mate, again, you saw the quality of contact last year. You saw the 90th percentile exit velocities and things like that, where it makes sense that he's doing that still. But with Peña, it seemed like, maybe even not mechanically, but if you just looked at the data, it was a little bit more of that like slash and dash type of batted ball data. And then this year, I know he's been banged up, but you're seeing top end EVs, and you're seeing him elevate a little bit more. And what was that shift? Was it a physical aspect of, because again, you look at kids that are going from 17 to 18, like it's a big year of development physically, but was it a mechanical aspect as well? Was it a little bit of both? Where has Peña found this additional power that I just think has elevated him so ridiculously?
Yeah, that's a really, really fun question to answer. This is a very collaborative effort here with our PD and our high performance group. It was a bit of a head scratcher when you looked at both of them compared to each other in the DSL, and it's like, how does Luis only have one home run? But just how physical he is as a player, how fast he moves the bat. From a high performance standpoint, there were some loading pattern issues and some instability in the lower half that we identified early on in the off season. So we were able to like bring him over stateside early in the off season, get him in the weight room, get the lower half stronger, get it a little bit more stable. Through some of the biomech side of things, we were able to identify some deficiencies and how he interacted with the ground. And so we were able to make some adjustments there. He's always had a steeper entry into the hitting zone. It's more of a downhill pattern. So moving the contact point a little bit further out front so that we can get to the desired ball flight. And we've made some mechanical adjustments, nothing major, just to kind of create a little bit more depth and being on plane behind the baseball. So it's just not straight downhill. So this has been a really cool developmental process for a young player who didn't have to have any major tweaks. It was just, we identified some things early in the process, quickly corrected them. He's bought into it, and I think we're starting to see some of the fruits of those labors.
So building on that, you mentioned some of the things that just allow him to tap into more game power. Obviously, naturally, just getting stronger and having your lower half more optimized and just able to have yourself balanced and stay into the backside. All of those things make sense. But when I look at maybe like a Braylon Payne too, and this is more like of a general question. And Payne's a guy too that I know you see what he flashes. Another guy that when you drafted him, can't blame him. He's one of the faster guys you're going to see in the amateur ranks. Slash and dash, you're going to get on base a lot of the time. But then you see him pop a 111 pull side, and you're like, whoa, how much more can we unlock there? But there's certain players that maybe the more you try to create that loft and that swing, maybe it takes them away from who they are. Do you guys identify players by like the archetype, and do you maybe not push as much to change the path if it is a guy that maybe is better with a flatter path? Or is it more just, no, at the end of the day, it's better to have this type of path, and even if you're a hitter that's more of that, contact oriented guy, we still have these same aspects that we want to see mechanically.
Hot topic right now, bat path, with everything that's been released with Savon and that's out there. We have to do our due diligence to understand the hitter. Early on, one of the things that I fully support and I'm very proud of like our hitting department and organizational philosophy is that we want our hitters to be themselves and let the pitching dictate when we need to make the adjustment. So, being the leader of the offensive department, like who are we to go up to a player and say, you can't do this? Let them show us that they can do it versus, hey, you can't do this right off the rip. And we may know, evidence is going to show that maybe this type of swing path or this kind of swing profile isn't predictive of future success at the upper levels, right? But I think ultimately we have to let the pitching, Luke Adams is a great example of this, is that big mover, unique mover, high leg kick, big hand pump. We didn't touch Luke because ultimately these moves are organic, right? They're homegrown. And if we take them away, how do we bring them back if it doesn't work? So it's like, now Luke has made some adjustments, and it's the same thing with you look at Jesus Mate, right? Extreme shift in center of mass. It's kind of like a front foot collision hitter. Well, it's working right now, but I think we all who've been around the game enough to know that we're going to have to make some adjustments. But let this work right now, and then ultimately if and when he does struggle, he might be more receptive to change. The same thing with Peña is that downhill, that slash and run kind of profile. It's like, understand that may work there, but this is what we want to do. How do we improve it? We just let the pitching dictate ultimately with a plan in place. It isn't like we're just shooting from the hip. So getting back to the original question, we're going to identify their swing paths because we know that at the upper levels, you could say AA up to the big leagues, they're taking swing paths and they're matching arsenals to the swing path. How do we get this swing path out with what we have on the mound, right? So we have to be able to problem solve these pitch types and have game plans. If you're more uphill, like top of the zone might be something where we just check off of and we don't swing at. If you're more downhill, we might have to look for pitches up in the zone, or like we might have to make some adjustments. At the very least, give them the tool to solve the problem.
It's funny, like I think about, and obviously, it may not be bat path related, but I think about guys making changes at the big leagues when they encounter adversity, like Neto, right? Neto scrapping the big leg kick in Anaheim, and then Matt
Right.
Shaw as well working on the leg kick when he goes back down to Iowa. Like these are guys that encounter adversity in the batter's box for the very first time at the major league level. So is there any urgency for guys to, kind of make the correction? Obviously, there's no urgency for guys to run into adversity in the minor leagues, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's game planning, for us as a coaching staff. I think the big thing we talk about is when the opportunity presents itself, we have to be ready. Some coaches, some organizations really want to insert themselves, and I'm not saying that's wrong, it's just what we don't do, is that we have to have a plan in place, but we also have to have that opportunity present itself for the player to be willing to like maybe adjust. We can sit there and say, we know this isn't going to work. Like the Braylon Payne. Braylon Payne is a very stiff mover, right? We've done all of our mobility assessments on it. He understands he's a stiff mover. There's some awkward swings there. We have a plan in place to make some adjustments for Braylon when Braylon is ready for those adjustments. It's like this guy just got drafted last year, not almost a full calendar year into his professional career. Let's see what you can do. And he's like, I'm a first rounder. I got drafted in the first round for a reason. Can I continue the success I have? Right. So there's some give and take there where I just don't want our coaches to come in and say, you have to do this. We have a really great relationship with our coaching staff at the major league level. So we're in constant communication. Caleb Durbin has had to make some adjustments since being called up, after we traded for him. Pitchers at the major level, they're gonna find your weakness, they're gonna exploit it immediately. We have to be able to have a solve for it, and hopefully it doesn't involve guys being sent down, but now it just becomes like, okay, it's time to adjust. Here's the plan, let's implement it. What do you think?
And I love that approach because we always talk about it from like a swing decision perspective, and then not as much about like the mechanical adjustment perspective where, you talked about a Chorio in the past as well. How do you convince a player who has just put up ridiculous numbers at every level? We talked about it with Pete Crow Armstrong as well. And when he was hitting 300 in 2022 in the minor leagues, how do you tell that guy to swing less? He's hitting 300, right? So it's that side of it too that I can imagine is interesting. But how do you guys approach the other side of the spectrum? Because I think about Amade, and you just can't teach that patience. Some guys are just built that way, and that's awesome. But there's also that tipping point where, I'm sure you don't want to be passive as well, and you don't want to discourage a teenage prospect who's willing to wait things out. That's that talented offensively, because I imagine that's a very exciting aspect of things. But when you have a guy that maybe borders on that passive, how do you navigate that side of things? And is that still something where it's like, wait until he struggles, but those struggles may not come because guys don't throw strikes until, at a high clip until you get to more challenging levels?
Yeah. When we're coming into topics of like swing decisions and swing rates, it's very easy to look good if you don't swing, right? And so I think it's just understanding how they get into certain counts. If we do have a player that's super passive, and we have a number of players in our organization that are really passive, and it looks like they don't chase, and we have some guys that are overly aggressive, and we have different protocols, whether it's training or just messaging, internal metrics that we can present to players to drive home the message there. But when it comes to like, Jesus Mate, he's swinging at 40% of the time, right? Like he's super aggressive. It reminds me of a story of Yadier Arenamo, elite batsman, right? But 35% chase rate. I think he won the batting title in the Midwest League last year. But like we had to tell him that is not indicative of future success in AA, AAA, and the big leagues. So he thought he tied his identity to batting average. Well, he's repeating high A now, and it's like you have to understand where I think industry wide where they want to move guys quickly and they want to like promote guys and all of it. It's like we had a little bit more patience and we stood firm on a message that we're telling you swing decisions matter. And if you can't stay in the zone, you don't move. And Yadier Anamo, like that message resonated when he went back to Wisconsin. So it's like, okay, here, it's not where you start, it's where you finish. So like, let's get better at this, put a little bit more intent behind our training to move forward. It's going to be the same thing with some of these younger guys who hit the ball on the ground too much or too overly aggressive, but let them be overly aggressive in low A. You get to high A where now you start deciding on, can you go to double A? Can you be a contributor at the major league level? Or do we just have a high A player? That's when the message, I think, gets a little bit more intense. We get a little bit more sense of urgency with our development.
Sorry, Jack. I froze there for a second.
You good.
Sorry, my fault, Brenton. I'll follow up on that. Sorry, my Zoom froze for a sec. Just to tie a bow on the Made conversation as well, too, because even just looking at the DSL, you saw that like really low swing rate. Now it climbs to kind of a normal number there. But again, the bat to ball has been great. The quality of contact's great. Is there a type of player that you guys envision him ultimately being? Like, what does that archetype look like? Because it's just fascinating to me when people always ask us, like, and I really don't like comps, generally speaking, but you look at a switch hitting 6'1", 195, whatever. It's really hard to get the actual height and weights for us. But with someone that's posting already plus EVs and for his age plus, and the bat speed's so ridiculous. But then you mentioned it is a little bit heavy front foot and some of the things that I also start to wonder if he optimizes those mechanics a little bit further as he gets more advanced and more experience, like how much more power is in there. I think his average launch angle on hard hit baseballs is below 5 degrees. And again, he's still putting up ridiculous numbers. Like how high can you guys see that power going? Or do you ultimately still envision him kind of being a balance of both? Is it a little hit over power at the end of the day? Or is it just kind of, hey, we don't know and we're okay with that?
I think it's that. I mean, I don't do comps, so I appreciate your disdain for the comps.
I will say Aram did throw one out a few weeks ago.
I was coerced, and every once in a while, then I'll finally say I could see the production.
He threw it out on his own
this.
Volition. He said Ketel Marte starter kit. That was what he said. So I'm out of him real quick.
Okay, well that's not a bad, and I've heard that comp with Jesus. So it's the bat speed's there. Here's the thing, like with that type of swing profile, you've got to be pretty strong to like get the ball elevated. Mm-hmm. And he's hit a few balls out to the opposite field, left-handed, but the guy moves the bat 74 miles an hour. And I say guy, like this is still a kid who's 18 years old, right? So the ingredients are there. Jackson Chiaro was the same. He wasn't as heavy on the front side as Jesus is. Jesus is heavy from both sides, but Jackson, like with the leg kick, would charge forward a little bit. He made some understanding, like he grew up, he developed, he had understanding that if I need to make more contact to maximize my exit velo and my launch angle, I need to like ground myself a little bit. So, and I'm not comparing him to Jackson, but I can see somewhat of a transformation, limiting the leg kick, staying a little bit more grounded, maximizing the bat speed, pushing the contact point out front a little bit farther so we can get actually even see higher bat speed because it'll be up to it. But, let's let the kid play and let's let him figure out who he is. And then, we obviously understand that there's an immense amount of talent there, but like we're not going to corral this kid. We're going to let him explore and keep doing what he's doing. And then ultimately present a plan, which, I mean, we have the framework of a plan in place right now. It's not necessary because he's doing what he's doing. So let's stay out of the way for a bit.
When that plan is executed, and obviously, like we've talked about it, it's impossible to know when that plan is going to be executed, but is it a level thing or is it like, okay, Jesus Mata gets to double A, this is where we really want to lay the groundwork for who you can be as a Major League Baseball player?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak from past experience with Jackson. Jackson going into his double A season, it was the same thing. It's like, okay, the damage profile is there, the swing decisions are okay, but like the contact seems to be the missing piece. So that's when Jackson made the conscious effort to kind of ditch the leg kick, stay a little bit more grounded, just do more of that turn in with the front foot, he started producing more contact. And I believe that was when they had the souped up baseball in the Southern League, right? So like, they got rid of it at the All-Star break, and you really saw his numbers take off. And all of a sudden it's like, what do we have here? I can see a similar trajectory, like timeline happening here with Jesus. I think he's just so confident in his abilities and his belief to hit, which is a major component that, like, let's let this ride. But I can see when pitchers start exploring like command of 3 or 4 pitches, they start yo-yoing back and forth, in and out, up and down. I can see him then understanding, okay, I can't keep doing this anymore. And, like, we can start teasing it out, instructionally would be the times to do it. We can tease out a little bit lower half adjustment. We can tease out a little bit more of a ball flight, a contact point adjustment. We can start building those in, but as far as like ditching a leg kick or minimizing the leg kick, I should say, I could see that happening in Double A, but it's going to be up to him.
A few other just like quick hitters I wanted to check in on with you. Eric Batante's got I'd circled going into this year just because you saw what he did last year. You had to just be thrilled with that, just to do what he did, the complex, and then not only hold his own in low A, just do damage in low A. And then it was a little bit of a slow start out of the gate, but he's going to be 19 for the whole season. He's starting to heat up a little bit now. Right. What's most impressive to me is he's 6'5", 225, 230 pounds, but he is so malleable in the box, and you just see like the B swing still able to do damage. It's all fields. What's a plan for a guy like that? Because we're talking about Jesus Mate versus a Batante who's just a gargantuan human who has the power and elevates already really consistently. So what do you guys focus on to maybe get that K rate in check and just basically help him get to where he needs to be?
This is one of my favorite players to talk about because this is a player that wants it really bad, and I think part of his struggles early on in the season, the higher K rate, the lower contact rate, have come from him pressing too much. Because he just wants it that bad. He's a student of the game. He comes in after every game wanting to look at his swing decisions, how he's being pitched. So he's invested in his craft, and he just wants it so much that he's forcing the issue, not letting it happen. From a physical development standpoint, simplification of the lower half is what we're targeting here. There is a little bit of a unique loading pattern that forces timing issues and contact issues that he just needs to understand, like, okay, this got you here. Now we need to make an adjustment. And so, like, I think when I mentioned like pitching will indicate when we need to make adjustments, I think the Carolina League has indicated to Eric that, okay, it's time for us to like really look into how do we tweak something here and there, and that's going to come from the lower half. The bat speed, the strength, the size are all there. It's just understanding like, okay, I can't keep doing this, or if I keep doing this, my contact rate might be sub 60%, and my K rate is going to be mid 30s, which we don't want for a 19-year-old. We don't want at any level. So it's how do we understand that just simplifying your setup process, and just by you putting the bat on the ball's going to go. We don't need to add to it. So he's one who's been in the system a little bit longer, where we might just say, okay, let's start making a second half adjustment to prepare you for what's next, versus a guy that just got in the organization and we want to let it play. It's like, Eric's been here for a little bit. It's time to make a small tweak here and there.
And then like a Josh Adamczewski, like, when did you realize what you had there? 15th round pick. It wasn't like he got $2 million or anything like that either. He's banged up right now, but the start that he got after the year was just crazy. And you look at the complex numbers too; they were fantastic. But there was maybe a little bit of underlying lift, so you think, okay, well, how is he going to handle low A? And he has so far handled it with flying colors. When did you guys realize you have something there?
I knew I had some. Well, not I. I knew we had something with him when I actually had to do like a recruiting call. When we drafted him, he had signed with Ball State out of high school. That's where he was going to go. And so I had to do a recruiting pitch for him to sign with us. And just listening to his approach to hitting and having done some video analysis and taken a deep dive into it, the intent to hit is off the charts with this guy. He expects to hit the ball hard and get it hit every time. And so for a high schooler, and if you go back and you look at some of the swings he had in high school, like the swing setups, if you can find them, it was wild and moving parts, elbows and knees going everywhere. But for him to get the barrel to the ball, that's when I was like, the barrel accuracy, the bat speed, the strength were all there. And then seeing him come into the complex and just hit the ground running was pretty impressive. And he's had some really, really weird and unfortunate luck and injuries that have derailed his success. But when the season started, he was the best pure hitter on that team. The best. I will tell you that right now. And it was really excited. People are excited to see what he can do. We just got to get Josh healthy and get him off and running again.
What does a recruiting pitch look like to get a guy to sign? I'm really curious because obviously we hear all about the recruiting pitch, disincentivizing guys from signing. And it's like, hey, we got to get you on campus. What does the opposite look like?
I think it's obviously understanding what the family wants and what they value. But just for me, hyping up what we do from a development standpoint, you get paid to play baseball. That's the first one, right? You get paid to, which now, NIL, that's happening at the collegiate level, but you don't have to go to school, which I am a proponent of being educated, but it's like you might run the risk of redshirting. You might run the risk of not playing every day. If you sign with us, we've obviously identified you as a talent. You get to play every day. You get to start your professional career. We have all the resources for you when it comes to weight room, when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to sports psych, when it comes to biomech, player development. We have everything here for you. What do you want to value? Where do your values lie? Do your values lie in wanting to be on campus, experiencing college? We can't compete with that. But I'm going to tell you, like I told Brock Wilken, Zebulon, North Carolina is a lot nicer than Wake Forest, right? You're joking around with them, but it's you're going to get to experience some cities and some things you've never done. But I think I just tell players, we value you. You're going to play a lot versus a freshman year and having to prove yourself. We are going to invest our resources into you. That's the best thing that you could ask for as a ball player. And so that's kind of where I start. And then I'll go into what we do well and how we would make you better. And, big leagues are kind of cool.
Well, I'd imagine too, because, you think about it, hey, maybe I sign with a team and then I'm one of many players in that organization. What if I'm an afterthought and then I'm stuck there? So to get that pitch from you, I'd be sold pretty quickly there when you can tell me what I can do better, how you're going to help me do it. And again, you guys have clearly validated that decision, and he has himself as well, just in the early going here with what he's been able to do. I want to tee you up here. One of the last questions is just, this organization is so talented. I've maintained for the last year that I thought either the best farm system in baseball or right there with just about any. And that was before everybody that's a teenager in this organization decided to be incredible. Who are some players that maybe aren't getting as much of the shine or maybe aren't even performing yet that you feel really good about? I know this wasn't on the rundown. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
That you are just really excited about. Maybe even a AAA guy that you like a change that he made. I know Ernesto Martinez was awesome to start the year, but is there some underrated players that you think maybe deserve a little bit more shine?
Yeah, this one isn't underrated. The rebound that Brock Wilken has had this year, it's been really exciting. Like the work that Brock has put in the weight room, the work that Brock has put into his setup. We made some tweaks in spring training, just to see the true talent come out this year after a really hard and challenging first full season for him. It's really exciting to see that. Marco Dinges, who I touched on a little bit, we got out of the draft last year, was a hit first, catch second, DH'd only at Florida State. We knew what we had walking in the door because when we put the blast sensor on him in Instruction League, he was cruising at 77 miles an hour. Wow. Cruising. And I'm not exaggerating here. And we're topping out routinely at 85, 86 miles an hour. The dude moved the bat, and we talked to Marco, who just loves to hit. Where's your area of improvement? He goes, I hit the ball on the ground too much. I got to get the ball in the air. And he has put so much focus into getting the ball off the ground. But it's earned him like a promotion very quickly. As the catching catches up, like that's an exciting talent that I talk about, because if he can catch what he does offensively, we've got another pretty exciting prospect right there. Xavier Warren, who's in Biloxi right now, is helping our Biloxi group get off to an incredible offensive start. They got off to I think it was a 1-7 start to the season, and the offense has just exploded. Xavier Warren, who's been there for a little bit, has had a complete setup change that we started in the offseason, and he has seen the fruits of the labor, and he's gotten off to a really, really good start to the season. Very excited about that. We haven't touched on Cooper Pratt. I wouldn't say he's under the radar. No, but yeah, but and then I think we have some guys. Yadier Arinama, who I touched, that doesn't get enough shine. He is working extremely hard. He's added 3 to 4 miles an hour in peak exit velo this year, along with elite contact rates. So we sit there and we're like, oh my gosh, like we've got another guy coming right there. So those are just some of the guys to name a few that I know that aren't quite under the radar. But Josh Adamczewski was an under the radar guy last year. Yeah. Burst on the scene, has been injured a little bit, so he's probably flying under the radar again this year. Those would be some of the guys that I think that don't get enough shine.
We've already taken so much. I would say we've already taken so much of his time, but I just wanted to follow up on Cooper Pratt and what that would look like in terms of, he's a sum of the parts guy, just does so many different things well, and I think that's why he's so easy to fall in love with if you're a prospect evaluator, or obviously someone that is working closely with them in the organization, developing him. What's the next step for him to kind of get to where he ultimately can be?
Just understanding the importance of staying in the strike zone with his swing. Like Sal Frelick, like Yadier Arinama, these are guys that can put the bat on the ball just in any quadrant, in any batter's box, essentially, and understanding how we maximize that tool. I was just in Biloxi and I talked with Coop, who's got like a 65% chase rate and 2 strike counts. It's like, this is where we need to get better, right? You're getting stronger, you're hitting the ball harder, like you're just quote unquote a baseball rat, like he just loves to play, and like this is a future all-star in my opinion. It's just understanding like the little things is like, Coop, like this is going to get exposed very quickly at the AAA level. It's going to get exposed very quickly at the major league level. It's like we have to understand the importance of swinging at strikes and staying in the strike zone. So stuff like that, like these are like the fine tuning, just turning the dials a little bit and just developing some understanding, and then the counts that he gets in and how to manage those.
Last one for me, and it's kind of a big league question, I guess, but how excited was the organization to get their hands on Caleb Durbin?
Oh, extremely. He fits the vision for Murph at the major league level, kind of like that grinder, line drive guys. He's going to be a pest at the plate and fight off pitches. But like that fits what we do here, right? Guy gets on base, steals the base, aggressive on the bases, line drive approach with some sneaky pop. It's very, very excited to answer your question in short.
That was a player that we really fell in love with in the Arizona Fall League, because he's a player that I think you enjoy. He's best enjoyed over a larger sample. You watch him do all the little things. You watch the way he plays. You watch him battle. And when he was traded to the Brewers, we joked on the show, like, of course, that's who they targeted in the return. It just fits the bill so well. Yeah. Last one from me is just, especially now with the new job and just being able to have your hands on so many different things now and in such a, again, impressive organization. What's your favorite part of the gig now? And I know you've always loved working with hitters, and I know that's still a big part of what you're doing. Mm-hmm. But now that you have even more responsibility and more things going on, is it still the things that you loved in the beginning, or are there some new things that you love? I know I could tell just how much pride you take in the way you go about your business. It's always been so much fun to pick your brain. But what just brings you so much joy when I know you're one of the busiest men in baseball right now?
I think the collaborative effort, the challenge of maintaining collaboration, not only at the affiliate level, but throughout the system. A couple years ago, it was siloed, right? Like the pitching handled the pitching, the hitting handled the hitting, the defense handled hit. We are now reaching across the aisle, if you will, to our high performance group. So I use this analogy in spring training, not only for the hitting, but just for the vision of the organization. Is it's like an F1 pit crew, right? The players, the race car, but there's so many inputs that are helping with the overall output. And so whether it's performance psych, whether it's movement solutions, whether it's nutrition, obviously you got strength and conditioning, medical, like we're all pulling in the same direction. And I know that's really cliche, but to be able to help make sure that is being maintained, so we're maximizing player performance, it's really cool to be involved in those discussions.
Well, I appreciate you involving us even a little bit in what those discussions seem like, and just kind of how it all works behind one of the better organizations in baseball, doing all these things, and again, one of the most talented, where we're able to just kind of pick your brain. I could probably do this for 3 hours, so I already appreciate you taking so much time, and again, congratulations on all the success, you individually and the organization, and looking forward to hopefully talking about all the success in the organization again soon.
Yeah, I look forward to it. I look forward to be invited back again.
Thank you so much, Brenton.
Thanks, guys.